Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our interviews with subject matter experts from around the world. We like to talk about issues that are important to you as counselors, as advisors, and also to our students and the parents we serve, which is why I'm very excited today to have with me a student. Gabriella Grahek is originally graduated from Malibu High School, and she is now a student at Minerva College or Project. Welcome, Gabriella.
Thank you.
So did I say your last name right?
So it's Grahek.
Grahek. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's what origin is it?
Croatian, actually. So
Perfect. So tell us what your high school experience was like.
Sure. So I went to the local public high school. I grew up in Malibu, and it was a great school by many standards, but it was very much the system. It was full of bureaucracy, and it was all about doing those AP classes, going to the lectures, chugging information into your brain. It comes in one ear and it goes out the other as soon as you finish the AP exam. And I scored well. I did well in my classes. I was grateful for my my teachers, and it was an incredible community, but it was very frustrating because it was easy to do well. It took a lot of hours and a lot of work, but it wasn't actually challenging my academic curiosities or intellectual aspirations. And so it was kind of 4 years of being what felt like a very rote system. So when it came to looking for colleges, I was definitely looking for something that would be counter to that experience.
So what were
Did
you
I lose
looking
you?
for? No, I just turned my camera off
Okay.
because we're getting a little bit of lag on your
I see.
responses. So if I turn my camera off, then that'll widen up the bandwidth for you.
Yeah, sorry
So
about
you'll
that
hear me.
lag.
Oh
It's
no. Well, you're dealing with,
Wi-Fi in India.
yeah.
So,
No problem at all. And I've ended up doing some of these in yeah, by phone too. So,
okay.
we can do that. But if I turn my camera off, I think we'll be fine. And I'll be able to cut all of this out. So um,
Okay. Great.
So so you talked about what your high school experience was. So what were you looking for in a college experience then?
Yeah, so I was looking for an environment that I believed would challenge me daily and would require that I grow intellectually and emotionally. I knew that I could work harder than I had in high school. I had really dedicated myself to a lot of extracurricular activities to kind of make up for what felt like a lack of rigor in my academic environment. And so I wanted to be at an institution that I felt would require I challenge myself academically as well.
So how did you find out about Minerva then?
Yeah, I was really lucky to be working with a college counselor at the time who learned about Minerva and sent a link to some of the students he was working with to a New York Times article about Minerva. And so he sent it to the few of us he thought were kind of crazy enough to even consider it, because this was fall 2013, and Minerva was really just a concept at that point. It had been developing for a few years. The founder, Ben Nelson, and the CTO, JK, Jonathan Katzman, they developed a lot of the platform already, but there were no students yet. And so it was really this wild concept that had not that much coverage, not that much information available about it online. But yeah, that's how I found out about it, a New York Times article and a college counselor.
Those articles, that's a great way to spread information for sure.
Yeah.
So what attracted you? What was it that was unique about Minerva that made you go, oh, this does sound like something that I want to do?
Yeah, it was, I think primarily, I'd done the full kind of college tour of the Northeast. I primarily looked at smaller liberal arts colleges, so in the Northeast, and then some schools in California. And in all of those, I really felt like when I sat in on classes or did campus tours and spoke to students, the description of their experience seemed like a slightly fancier version of what I'd experienced in high school, but there was nothing fundamentally different about the way they were being taught. And after kind of 4 years of lectures and this rote memorization process, I was really looking for something that was different, and that is definitely what Minerva is, different. The core aspect of Minerva that I really appreciated is the intentionality in its design. So the academic component is all designed to include the science of learning, what we know about how our brains work, how we absorb information, process it, encode it, and then apply it to all aspects of the curriculum, all aspects of the classroom design on our active learning forum, the Alpha, as we call it for short, the online platform we use to take our classes. Everything is super intentional. And then the science of learning is what kind of fuels that intentionality. And then the international student body. So the first class of students at Minerva in 2014 to 2015, we were 28 students from 14 different countries. And the student body has since grown, and I think we represent over 70 different countries at this point. So we're a completely international student body, and that has been absolutely incredible. It's very different than even just studying abroad in an international community. When you're living with students from so many different countries, it brings about a lot of different questions on how we operate as a global society. And kind of the last piece that was really critical of why I was so attracted to Minerva is that as an institution it is innovating and attempting to improve what it perceives to be a broken system. And I agree. I think there are aspects of higher education in the United States and globally that aren't working as best as they can. And so Minerva is trying to design and develop a strong solution to some of those challenges.
So did you feel like when you found out about Minerva, like this is where I belong?
Yeah, it's quite funny. Shortly after we started in the first year, they did some filmed interviews with a handful of students, and I was one of those students. And in that interview, I described Minerva as my dream school, as if I had dreamed it up and all of a sudden it existed. And I'd say that really is true. It is kind of, there were so many aspects of how it was set up that were just, wow, how it's as if, a month ago this didn't exist and now it does. And it's exactly where I need to be. And that didn't mean I was committed right away, though. I never thought I would be admitted. Once I was, it was very hard to actually decide to attend. But all my family and friends and teachers in high school and kind of significant influencers in my life, they all also thought, Gabby, it's the perfect school for you. You couldn't have found a better match. So it was interesting to experience that.
Well, and that was one of the other thoughts that we had is, well, what helped sway you? Because I'm sure you had lots of other really good choices for college. What swayed you to choose Minerva over those other choices?
Yeah, so it was interesting. It felt like choosing what might be kind of a secluded bubble that would be a really safe space and allow a lot of exploration, intellectual exploration, emotional exploration, but in a bubble environment versus choosing something that would be this just massively, wildly unknown question mark experience for the next 5 years. Because at that point, there was kind of a rough outline of what would happen the second year or the third or the fourth or the fifth year. We really didn't know what was going to happen much beyond the first kind of couple of weeks of joining Minerva. So I think that actually attracted me to the experience because it really meant that it would definitely be a challenge. Stepping into something that's going to be pretty unknown for a long time will be challenging, and you have to figure out how to navigate that challenge while still pursuing your academic endeavors. I think another huge component, though, which at the time I tried not to think about it as much because I didn't want it to be the predominant reason why I chose a school, but in retrospect, I think it played more of a role than I give it credit for at the time, is the cost. As a founding class student, my tuition was covered for all 4 years, and my housing the first year was also covered. So for my kind of decision-making analysis in 2014 when I was debating kind of which path to go forward with. I was able to frame at least my first year of joining Minerva as kind of a paid-for gap year. If it doesn't become the institution that I want to stick with, it's going to be exposure to lots of different ways of living life. And I am only paying for food and transport. So that compared to an alternative, whether it be, Berkeley in-state price or out-of-state private liberal arts college in the Northeast, so 60 plus grand, there was no comparison with the amount of debt and loans I would have had to take out to attend another university. And even not as a founding class student, the cost of tuition is not comparable to, it's so much more affordable compared to elite liberal arts colleges in the US. And so when it came down to that, I couldn't stomach what it would mean to take out kind of, if you were paying full price, there are scholarships and financial aid, but if you're looking at the full price and cost, it would have been $250,000 compared to living expenses to live in 7 different cities over 5 years. So that was really significant in kind of how to evaluate what makes most sense for me.
Well, you bring up some really good points. And the whole affordability is becoming more and more, people are becoming much more conscious of it, and it's more aware and bringing that into the decision. College has gotten so expensive. We did an interview with Robin Goldberg, and I know now the cost of going to Minerva is still less than you would pay for an in-state flagship, like you said, like UC Berkeley, or like a third of the cost or even less than going to a private Northeast liberal arts. So that's a very good point.
And an interesting note on that actually, quickly, is even though from a US perspective, Minerva is much more affordable than other options, from an international perspective, it still isn't. And so when the majority of our student body is actually international students, it really brings a point home for how wealth is different in different countries, because our international students, our cost of attendance is still actually quite high. So that's an interesting dynamic that is experienced across the student body, and kind of really realizing very tangibly what costs mean from a global perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point, because some of these students, international students, could have gone to very good elite institutions for little or nothing.
Exactly.
And to pick Minerva over that shows the value and the draw for Minerva for those students. So did you know what you wanted to study when you started college, or did your experience in Minerva influence what you wanted to study?
Yeah, so it's my experience at Minerva has definitely influenced and changed what I am studying. I initially was committed to dual majoring in computational sciences and social sciences, with the aim of developing a computational mechanism for tracking and shutting down human trafficking globally. So that was a 5-year plan. And after the foundation year at Minerva, during which we have 4 cornerstone courses and are taught habits of mind and foundational concepts. It's a very broad introductory year. And combined with my subsequent gap year, following that first year, I transitioned to natural sciences, focusing on Earth systems and designing solutions. So it's essentially environmental studies with a focus on how do we create technological solutions to environmental challenges, and minoring in social sciences. And I'm now delving deep into agriculture and assessing the complexity of agricultural systems through a natural sciences lens.
So go back and tell what your original one was. You were breaking up a little bit, and we're going to have you explain why, where you're doing our interview from today and how that relates to what you're majoring.
Yeah.
So you said something about human trafficking. So explain that, rephrase
Yes.
that, or repeat that
Okay.
again.
Sure. So I was originally set on dual majoring in social sciences and computational sciences with the aim of developing a computational mechanism for tracking the global networks of human trafficking so that we could track them and shut them down. That was my 5-year intention with my studies. And I'd even envisioned how I would develop my capstone project, which is Minerva's equivalent of a senior thesis, but we work on it our junior and our senior year, specifically on that point on human trafficking. And that transitioned to a natural sciences major, focusing on earth systems and designing solutions. So that is essentially environmental studies with a focus on technological solutions to environmental challenges we face. And this brings me to where I am now, which is Hyderabad, India. We just completed our spring term of 2018 in Hyderabad, India. And during that term, I developed my capstone project to be focused on organic agriculture in India. And I started working in a few different aspects of research related to organic agriculture in India. And I have just returned to continue this work and develop my capstone project throughout this year. I will return again next year for January and February, and then I will rejoin Minerva in San Francisco in March, April, and we all graduate in May of 2019. But it's thanks to the Minerva platform that I'm able to pursue this project in this way, because I am able to return during term time to India and still maintain my academic schedule. And if I was not able to return to India, I would not be able to complete the research that I aim to for my project. So it's an exciting year ahead.
Well, and that further points to the uniqueness of the program and the flexibility, and really truly allowing you the ability to pursue your interests and build and expand upon those. You mentioned, living and traveling in all these different cities and countries. We know Minerva, basically you have a semester, a term in several different countries. What has your experience been so far with doing that, Gabriella?
Yeah, so it's varied. I think there's a lot of components that contribute to what your experience will be like. I've now started in San Francisco, and with Minerva lived in Berlin, Germany, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and in September for the fall term, I will be in London, England. The first semester abroad for Minerva was Berlin. So that was the first time Minerva had any of its operations internationally. And that was a very challenging 4 months. And I think that was primarily because it was really the first time to take students from 40 plus different countries, to process all those visas, to set up the strong enough Wi-Fi for our platform, to have the support mechanisms in place for the student body. It was a really big challenge. And that resulted in personally for me, that resulted in my experience in Berlin being kind of filled with a lot of stress. And I didn't really enjoy that city so much because I had to spend a lot of time figuring out how to adapt independently of Minerva. However, that changed very quickly with the second city, which was in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And Minerva learned very fast, which is part of being a startup and an innovative organization, is you have to learn quickly and apply quickly. And they set up incredibly improved support mechanisms, and the visa process was improved, the logistics for living was improved. And so kind of the foundations were in place for students to be able to better integrate with the city we were in. And since then, it has only gone uphill in terms of how Minerva support mechanisms are in place to allow students to best integrate, because 4 months it's a study abroad period length, typical study abroad period length, but it's still a very short amount of time, especially when the academic program we are doing is very much full time. From friends I have that are at other universities, they often tell me their study abroad programs are kind of known as the time when they have a break from their academics. It's kind of set up to be an easier term so that they can experience the culture and have more time for that type of exposure. Minerva does not do that. Every term is international. Every term is as hard as the one before, usually harder. And so working for students, so that doesn't leave that much time for immersion. So it's important that those support mechanisms are in place so that we're really able to maximize our time. Another huge thing is the cultural differences in the cities. So Germany was much less open to international students. We have civic partners in the cities we operate in, and these civic partners are set up so that students can work with these organizations, with government ministries, with businesses, and develop projects during the term time that are both useful for the organizations, for the place we are living, contributing to that society in some way, and also learning experiences for the students. And in Germany, it was really challenging to set up civic partnerships. In Buenos Aires, by contrast, it was so wildly fast and so many different options and opportunities for civic partnerships. The culture was just much more open to an international group of students and what we might have to offer them. And so for example, in Buenos Aires, I ended up working on a project with the Ministry of Urban and Social Integration for the city government of Buenos Aires. And the project was working with what they call Barrio 31, essentially slum, but they're trying to move away from the use of the word slum, 31. And this is a sum of 40,000 inhabitants, the largest in Buenos Aires, that the city has been working to improve the infrastructure of and integrate with the rest of the city. And so we were a group of 6 students working together with their research department of this project, doing research during the semester that directly influenced how they were operating that summer. And so that was a really rewarding experience to have as a sophomore in college, and demonstrated kind of the differences in culture, just as one example. And I could provide more from Seoul and from Hyderabad as well. But
that's fascinating, Gabriella, to be able to do that as a sophomore. Then did that influence your choices in terms of what you then wanted to study later, as you made a choice to change what you were studying?
Yes, I think it did actually. As part of working on the project, we were able to really learn a lot about how the barrio operated, how the infrastructure results in high levels of pollution and waste and environmental conditions that are toxic for both the inhabitants of the barrio and the entire city. And so it definitely was exposure to the need for increased holistic solutions for environmental problems that I think helped lean me towards my natural sciences major. Because at that time I was still a double major in social sciences and natural sciences, whereas now I've transitioned fully to just natural sciences, excuse me. Sinuses.
So you're going to be part of the first graduating class in Minerva then, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Well, that's a very exciting distinction to have, to be that founding class and help shape what Minerva is going to be like for future students. So, what recommendations do you have for other students now that are considering Minerva?
Yes. So I first and foremost recommend reaching out to current Minerva students, and this can be through talks that I believe are organized by the admissions team at Minerva. I think they still have kind of online talks where they're students, then you can go and they're live and you can ask questions and they'll answer them live. Um, you can reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. Or if you're welcome to share my email. I'm always happy to have a discussion with anybody who's interested in what the Minerva experience is from a student's perspective. I think it's really important to try to speak to students, current students, because Minerva is not for everyone at all. It is a very unique, challenging experience. It's not easy to pick up and move every 4 months, and during those 4 months also be moving from different places within the city you're living in. And it requires a desire to build the kind of agility and adaptability in order to live that way. And it means you don't have time for everything you maybe used to have time for. So there are advantages to this lifestyle, but there are also things that it mean you won't be able to do. You won't be able to keep up that sport. Maybe it was soccer, maybe you're on a soccer club team. It's going to be a lot harder to maintain playing soccer. You can join different groups and teams in the cities you go to, but it's for 4 months. So you have to figure that out again for the next semester. So there's certain kind of challenges in that regard for what it means to live as a Minerva student that are, I think, really important to understand if you are applying to Minerva or if you've been admitted or considering attending. And be up for a challenge. It's not easy. It's a tough academic environment, and it's also really rewarding. So anybody who likes big challenges, then consider it. And if you want to broaden your perspective on how life can be lived, then it's definitely the perfect place, because it's pretty impossible not to broaden your perspective on how you can live life if you're living in several different places with international students. And it's really a gift to be able to be exposed to so many different ways of thinking, not just, intellectual thinking, but ways of thinking, because everybody's brought up in very distinct cultural, social, economic, political environments. Yeah.
So, do you feel like it helps you to become truly a global citizen?
Yes, I do. I actually that Minerva is one of Minerva's strengths, and I think the way that Minerva is learning from kind of this first class, the class of 2019, and each of the cities we're going to the first time, means that they're able to kind of set up, again, more structural support to even strengthen even further how Minerva helps students gain global perspective. But yes, definitely.
And I think that appeals to a lot of different students, especially, as we work with students increasingly more international, from, international schools or programs or, just different systems. To be able to have that as an option, as a choice, I think is very exciting. Well, Gabriella, thank you so much. Good luck in all your endeavors and all the work that you're doing. Do you have plans for what you think you want to do once you finish at Minerva, or are you waiting to see?
Yeah, I have a few different ideas that are evolving, but I'm waiting to see. Overall, I think it's likely the project I'm working on as my capstone right now will continue for at least another year after I graduate. Then that would be ideal, and I definitely am considering graduate school options as well. So we'll see.
Well, congratulations. Good luck to you and all your endeavors. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.